between sanity and insanity, I mean, he gets this extreme with it. Now, Russell usually doesn't talk that extremely. If there's no intellectual difference between sanity and insanity, reason and unreason, truth and falsity, well, then the lunatic who believes he is a poached egg is to be condemned solely on the ground that he is in the minority. This is a desperate point of view. And it must be hoped that in some way we can escape it. That's all Russell has to say about that point of view in his History of Western Philosophy. That's all he has to say about it. Because acute man that he is and logician, he knows there is no reasonable and logical way to establish the authority of reason over unreason, to distinguish sanity from insanity. And so it looks like what we're left with is what a culture comes up with to decide. That frightened Russell, and I have to admit that I have a bit of Russell's nostalgia. It would be nice if we could rely on something more than, you know, a majority feeling a certain way. Unfortunately, the negative force of my argument is this, is that those attempts have failed and been discredited utterly as a result of our own culture and its development. We cannot, with reason, defend the distinction between reason and unreason. And that puts me in a strange position right now defending my analysis to the extent that I want to defend it. I will at least defend this much of what Russell says about it. It is a desperate point of view because it does put you in the position of saying to those who disagree with you that, well, geez, I don't think we're poached eggs. If one of you afterwards perhaps says to me, I really am a poached egg. I'm so glad you mentioned Russell mentioning poached eggs because I've always felt like a poached egg. And you expect me to have a great argument, I may just say, well, I don't feel like a poached egg, and we'll take a brief survey around here and see how many other poached eggs there are. But imagine my embarrassment, now to return to the postmodern condition. If I'm in a mall and I begin to feel like I'm in a loony bin, perhaps I'm not alone in feeling this way. I'm in a mall and I get what I call mall fever, where I just begin to look at the shoppers and the shopping frenzy and all the glass and the swirling, the twirling things, and I get mall fever and I have to get out, and I begin to feel like I'm a crazy man. And yet I have no ground on which to stand being in the minority in that feeling at that moment, because that passes for sanity, and that's what could be more sane than to spend some leisure time as opposed to free time, something we don't have any more of, free time, leisure time. In the mall, I mean, that's sane. Why do I get mall fever? I must be crazy. Well, I mean, I can't defend myself any more than the person with reasons. I mean, I can defend myself in other ways, but I can't with reasons any more than Russell could defend the distinction between insanity and sanity, madness and reason, with other reasons. Of course, that should have been obvious, and it would have been without perhaps some of the bad lessons that I have worked against in this course on Nietzsche, drawn from the dogmatic tradition of philosophy, which I really think have been a mistake. Namely that if reason is to be anything, it better be my damn reasons you agree with. My reason. In this case, Western reason. Nothing could be harder after this little postmodern fable, if you want to consider it yet another fable, that's fine with me. Nothing could be harder than to distinguish that fable from its non-fable aspects, its real aspects. I mean, that's like asking the question in our culture about anything, whether it really occurred or not. And it can be something that's happened to you. And after you think about it a while and you've seen a few movies, and the best way you can remember it is through its similarity with the TVs and movies you've seen. And my conversation here has reflected how many movie and TV examples I've used. If that becomes the way in which you process your experience, issues like truth versus reason, reason versus madness, truth versus falsity, will simply fall away. They'll fall away because the anchor for those issues raised by Nietzsche was that very tension between what might be reasonable and what might be mad, what might be a truth that would be life-affirming for us, and what might be a lie that would not be good for us. Those distinctions will fall away. So I don't know how to put a happy twist on this story. In fact, I feel much in the position that William Gibson does in his magnificent novel, Neuromancer. I recommend it all to you. Gibson's novel, you know how many novels begin with sentences describing the sky and the landscape? So many. It's just a standard novelistic beginning. Gibson begins his novel, Neuromancer, with the following sentence, and I consider it the best first sentence in 20th century American literature. I hate to even use the word literature about this stuff. The Neuromancer being a work of what I call near future fiction, a work that projects, as does the movie Blade Runner, the near future of possible social developments based on very close analysis of current trends. In any case, the first sentence of the novel goes like this. The sky above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel. Marvelous. Sets the tone for an incredible book. Short, tough, interesting, brilliant. That sentence frames for me a description of sort of the postmodern trajectory. And to distance that sentence, and there is a massive distance, you could distance it from the sentences of Zarathustra, from the gay science. You could distance it from first sentences of novels such as Call Me Ishmael, Moby Dick. That's a pretty well-known first sentence in a novel, Call Me Ishmael, referring all the way backward to a biblical text and all the way forward to a new adventure, a new American adventure in living a life that would allow for difference and community, that would allow for freedom and the recognition of necessity. And that project ends, in my view, or at least the dawning of the end, if that makes sense, in Gibson and in that wonderful first sentence. The sky above the port was the color of television, tuned to a dead channel. The fights that remain, the living antagonisms in our possibilities to construct ourselves in anything like free and autonomous ways, will have to be fought across that barren, strange landscape, that unthinkable cultural future of deferred and indifferent pseudo-experience. And across that terrain, the struggles for even moments of authentic lived experience, authentic in quotes, who knows, of lived experience, to feel something for God's sakes, anything, will be the locus of struggle and of action, we can hope. Here I will call to your mind a scene from Blade Runner where before the replicant dies, Roy Batty, he slams his hand on a nail. And many of you may not know this, but when Batty does that in the film, it's a reference to an action that Sartre has a character perform in Roads to Freedom. In Roads to Freedom, the Sartre character slams his hand onto a nail to prove that he's free, because he chose to do it. It hurt like hell, but he chose it. Oh, I put my hand on that nail, and that shows I'm free, because just a calculus of deterministic pleasure, I would never have done it. So it's a philosophical demonstration, a painful and stupid one, in my opinion. But by the time we get to Blade Runner, the replicant slams his hand onto a nail just to feel anything. Just to feel anything. So don't worry about the communist or the capitalist. Fight to feel and live anything. Thank you. I have enjoyed it very much. Thank you.